Every creator knows that sinking feeling. You pour your heart into a new video, you hit publish, and crickets. It's the same handful of views, maybe a couple comments, and of course, no new subscribers. And it's frustrating enough to make you question every decision that you've made so far. Most people double down on things like gear upgrades, or they sign up for more courses, or they blame the algorithm and luck and timing. But if you're a newer or small creator struggling to grow, there's likely a hidden factor at play here, and it's something that I call the audience trap. The reality is your future audience, the people who would happily hit subscribe if they actually found you, probably aren't who you think they are. And this misalignment is exactly what keeps 99% of creators stuck. And while it's simple to fix, it's surprisingly difficult to spot. I know this firsthand because after 10 years working as a creative director, producing content for brands with hundreds of millions of users, I still got caught by this same trap when I started creating for myself. And it's sneaky because it feels natural and professional even, but until you can recognize and overcome it, it will continue sabotaging your growth. Which is why in today's video, I'll be breaking down first what this audience trap is and why we fall into it. We'll go into the hidden impact that it's having on your content, and lastly, we'll be going over the exact strategy that I used to break free from this, which was able to grow my Instagram to 100,000 followers in a year, and that I also used on this channel to get 1,000 subs in just 3 weeks and 2 videos. So let's start by acknowledging that the path of the creator is unlike most careers. It's driven by passion, fueled by competition, and filled with infinite possibilities for growth. And that combination creates unique pressure. It pushes us to seek guidance everywhere that we can. So we find our influences, the creators that we admire, the podcast hosts who inspire us, the experts whose tutorials that we binge. We gravitate towards them because they have it figured out. They're living proof that this difficult path that we've chosen can work. But we don't just learn from them. We immerse ourselves in their world. Their content fills our feeds. Their voices play in our headphones and speakers during our commute. Their tutorials light up our second monitors late into the night as we practice their techniques. This dedication to learning from these leaders makes sense. Every new skill can open another door. Each insight might be the key for your next big break. And as these mentors and idols become our constant companions on our journey, we begin to envision them as our future peers, and I think that this makes complete sense, and in my opinion is a healthy and realistic goal to strive for. But at some point, a subtle shift starts to happen. Without even realizing it, we start creating our content through the lens of what we assume they would think or feel if they came across our content. Now, we never say out loud to ourselves or crystallize the idea that we make this content for that creator or mentor. The influence is far more subtle than that. It seeps into our decisions, our standards, our entire creative process without us even noticing. It feels innocent, but it's completely undermining your growth. I'll be the first to admit that this is an uncomfortable, awkward concept to come to terms with, and while some of you may have just had an aha moment just now, others might resist or not quite see it yet, and that's okay because this isn't something that we consciously do. But if you're struggling to grow an audience, this hidden influence is likely shaping your content without you realizing it. So even if you don't see it yet, stick with me because understanding exactly how it's holding you back, which is what we'll get into now, could be the key to finally unlocking that growth that's been escaping you. And real quick, for those of you who are also looking to grow outside of YouTube, I break down how this exact same strategy took me from 0 to 80,000 followers in under a year on Instagram in my free guide linked in the description. So if that sounds interesting, make sure to grab that link. But for now, let's break down how this trap is capping your growth here on YouTube. When we create through the lens of how our influences might theoretically respond or react to what we make, we unknowingly create a gap between our content and the audience who would willingly subscribe to it. For example, as creatives, every time we learn something new, we raise our internal bar and we start producing at that new normal. We think we're producing better content because it's more sophisticated and is featuring the most up-to-date knowledge and skills that we have. The problem is that when we create content this way, we're unknowingly pulling the ladder up behind us. So instead of helping viewers climb from where they are to where we are now, We start talking only to those who've reached or already surpassed the same level that we just made it to. The concepts that took us months or even years to learn are now compressed into content that's hard for newcomers to follow. The very audience that needs your insights can't understand them, and it's just too big of a leap. This is why even highly knowledgeable and skilled creatives often struggle to build an audience when they become a creator because they let their expertise become a barrier rather than a bridge. But the real loss here is that it doesn't just cost you a single view or subscriber in the moment. It costs you long-term fans who could have grown with you over months or years. When they click away from your video because that first rung of the ladder isn't there for them, you miss out on building that foundational audience that would gladly hit subscribe and continue to return if only they had felt understood in the first place. The good news here is that once you see this pattern, you can flip it, and your hard-earned knowledge and experience can stop turning away your audience and begin to start attracting them. Now, I know countless videos promise to help you identify and reach your audience, or that they have the trick to getting more followers, but the truth is that there's no one-size-fits-all formula. However, that being said, luckily you don't need something complicated to get your first 10K followers. So what I've done and that we can go through now is that I've simplified my strategy down to 3 principles that I used to unlock my first 100K following on Instagram, and that also helped me monetize 2 channels here on YouTube in just a few weeks. The first principle is that you simply need to identify your real audience. Many creators assume that good work will automatically attract an audience or that the algorithm will sort it out behind the scenes, but the truth is the algorithm will be more likely to surface your content when it sees a clear pattern in who it's for. The thing here is that if you aren't even clear on who your audience is, the algorithm won't be either, and you can't just hold a loose persona in your head like most people do, that you're creating content for people like you. If you haven't taken the time to actually sit down and write down who your audience is, you don't have a target yet, and in turn your content will be aimless and the algorithm will be confused. But if you're completely lost on how to start formalizing this target audience, the easiest starting point is to simply think back to your past self. Ask yourself what questions kept you up at night, what resources were you desperately searching for, what concepts seemed just out of reach. Use these memories as a blueprint, because through recalling how you felt and what you needed, you now have the topics and concepts that will immediately resonate deeply with viewers who are right where you once were. By taking this approach, you'll remove all of the guesswork of whether your content will find an audience, because your audience is you. It's those concepts that seemed impossibly complex until someone explained them right. The things that you wish you had known that seem so obvious now. Those are the concepts and topics that will bring an audience to your content that you would have valued when you would watch this video at some point in your past. Okay, so principle 2 is that we need to speak the right language. When we learn something new, we nearly always forget how we thought about it before, and this is intentional and is a result of our imposter syndrome as creatives. As we unlock new jargon or frameworks and acronyms, they instantly become our new default. And naturally, this makes its way into our content. We can't help but signal that we get it, because the moment we learn the right way to describe something, we feel embarrassed about how we explained or spoke about it before. But as content creators, we can't afford to be embarrassed by our earlier, more basic explanations. Those explanations are the key to connecting. They're exactly what creates the bridge between where your viewers are now and where you can take them. By speaking their language, not the polished advanced terms that you've just learned, you'll help them finally grasp the concepts that they've been wrestling with. And let me tell you, when you offer up that shortcut, your viewers will gladly pay the toll on that bridge with a like or follow. Okay, so let's dig into principle 3, which is that we need to redefine success for your content. Most creators try to measure their content success entirely through the normal metrics: views, follows, subscribes. But in the beginning, while those numbers are still small and as they're still working to pick up momentum, we always end up turning to the audience trap metric. We silently tell ourselves that if this content can just get a like or a comment, or even just get noticed by one of those influences that we talked about earlier, that we'll know we did it right. But we have to break out of this mindset, and instead, the best way to define or to reframe the success of a script or video that you make is by how much time or struggle your content would have saved you if you had discovered it when you were first starting out. If you can objectively look at that content and honestly say to yourself that it would have given past you a shortcut, then it's 100% a win. So if you can just focus on providing that same gift to your viewers, you'll watch your following grow in return. Now, I do get the natural hesitation to adopt these principles. There's an innate fear in us that if we aim our content at beginners, we'll be seen as a beginner too. But this could not be further from the truth. If you're here right now watching this video, actively working to improve your craft, you're much further along than you realize. You're just caught in viewing yourself through the supposed lens of the creators that you look up to. What you're missing is that thousands of new creators start their journey every single day, and each one of them sees you as someone who's already walked the path that they're just beginning. To them, you're the mentor and inspiration, and that's why these 3 principles are so powerful. When you identify the moments and challenges that shaped your own path, and you meet people where they are with their present level of understanding, and you begin to measure your success by how well your content landed, rather than how strongly it signaled your expertise, you'll begin to transform your knowledge into value for others. This subtle shift changes everything. Instead of tuning out or clicking away, your viewers will begin to connect with you, and I promise they'll subscribe for more.